There is a war happening inside your head right now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, a war between the voice that says you are not enough and the voice that knows you were born for more. A war between fear and courage, between weakness and power. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't learn how to win this war, you will lose it. Every single day. Negative thoughts don't just appear, they invade. They poison your mind, chain your confidence, and drain your strength until you become a prisoner inside your own skull. You think you're living freely, but in reality you're shackled by your doubts, by your insecurities, by the endless whispers of failure. And if you don't crush them, they will crush you. But there is a way out. Psychology has revealed laws, not theories, not wishes, but laws that can forge your mind into a fortress. Walls that no insult can break. Weapons that no fear can withstand. Strategies that don't just silence negative thoughts, they annihilate them. Law 1. The law of inner command. Every empire collapses the moment its king loses control. The greatest empire you will ever rule is your mind. And the tragedy is, most people are not kings of their own minds. They are prisoners, chained by fear, whipped by doubt, and ruled by insecurities that never asked for permission but seized the throne anyway. Your negative thoughts are not just harmless ideas. They are rebels, traitors, assassins hiding inside the castle. Psychology calls them automatic negative thoughts, ANTs. They appear without warning. You don't invite them, they simply crawl in, whispering things like, "You can't do this, you're not good enough, you will fail." These are not truths, but the mind obeys them as if they were. And once you obey, they win. But here is the secret. A thought is not a law. A thought is just electricity firing in your brain. It has no power until you kneel before it. The law of inner command says this: your thoughts do not rule you. You rule them. You are not the servant, you are the commander. And the moment you accept that role, the rebels inside your head lose their power. Imagine you are a general standing at the gates of a fortress. A soldier runs in screaming, "We are doomed. The enemy is stronger. We cannot fight." If you panic, your army collapses before the battle even begins. That soldier is your negative thought. But a true general does not obey fear. A true general replies with authority. Silence. I decide the battle, not you. That single command changes everything. Psychology has proven this again and again. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is the most researched psychological method for defeating anxiety and depression. And what does it teach? To capture your thoughts, to challenge them, and to replace them. In other words, to command them. When your brain screams, "You're going to fail," you don't surrender, you don't argue, you don't bow down. You command, "This thought has no power unless I give it power." This is not delusion, this is science. Because the moment you label a thought as false, its emotional intensity drops. The fortress walls hold. The enemy retreats. But command is not automatic. It requires training, and training begins with awareness. The first discipline of inner command is catching the rebel the moment it appears. Most people let negative thoughts sneak in without resistance. They hear, "I'm not good enough," and they accept it as reality. You must refuse this weakness. The instant you feel fear or doubt rise, you name it for what it is: a rebel thought, a liar, an intruder. By naming it, you strip it of disguise. The second discipline is authority. You do not beg your thoughts to leave. You command them. You say with force, "I am the ruler here. My mind obeys me. I decide reality." This declaration is not just empty self-talk. It is neuroplasticity in action. Each time you assert control, neurons fire and strengthen new pathways. You are literally wiring your brain for command. Fear pathways weaken. Control pathways grow stronger. What feels forced at first becomes natural over time. The third discipline is weaponized replacement. A commander does not just push rebels out. He fills the fortress with loyal soldiers. When you reject a negative thought, you must replace it with one of power. If the mind says, "I can't handle this," you reply, "I will handle it step by step." If it says, "Everyone will judge me," you reply, "Their judgment is powerless here." If it says, "I'm not enough," you reply, "I am building myself into more every day." This is not fantasy. This is cognitive restructuring, the sword of psychology. With every replacement, you reprogram the fortress. But a fortress is not built once. It must be reinforced daily. That is why command must become ritual. Every morning you begin with the battle cry. Today, my mind obeys me. I am not my thoughts. I am the commander of my thoughts. Every night you review the day. Ask yourself, which rebels attacked me? Did I let them sit on the throne, or did I push them back outside the gates? This is journaling, but not weak journaling. This is war record. This is strategy log. And with every entry, you sharpen the discipline of command. Understand this clearly. This law works because psychology and neuroscience demand that it works. CBT proves that challenging and replacing thoughts rewires your brain. Neuroplasticity shows your brain adapts to whatever commands you repeat. Mindfulness teaches that thoughts are not reality, only passing clouds. The law of inner command is simply the warrior's translation of these truths. It is ruthless mindfulness. It is disciplined rewiring. It is science turned into a weapon, and you must repeat the weapon until it becomes your second nature. Every time a thought rises, ask yourself, who rules this kingdom? The thought or me? If the thought rules, you are a prisoner. If you rule, you are the king. The fortress mind does not bow. It does not ask permission. It commands. Now, repeat after me, louder, sharper, with authority that shakes your inner walls. My mind obeys me. I am the ruler within. No thought commands me. I command all thoughts. This is Law 1, the law of inner command. Break it, and every other law fails. Master it, and your fortress is unshakable. Law 2, the law of fortress walls. Negative thoughts are like enemy armies. They don't come once. They come again and again, wave after wave, looking for weak spots in your defenses. If your mind is wide open, unguarded, unprotected, then even the smallest attack can break you. One tiny criticism from someone, one failure, one mistake, and suddenly your whole self-worth collapses. Why? Because there were no walls. A fortress without walls is not a fortress. It is an invitation for destruction. And this is why the second psychological law exists, the law of fortress walls. Most people think strength is about fighting harder, but true strength is about building walls so strong that enemies cannot even step inside. This law is not about reacting to negativity after it enters your mind. It is about prevention, about stopping the enemy at the gates so the battle never begins. And this is where psychology and strategy unite. In psychology, this wall is called your mental filter. Most people allow every piece of negativity, every toxic opinion, every random thought to enter without resistance. Someone says one insulting word, and they carry it for years. A small failure happens, and it becomes their identity. But the fortress mind filters. It does not let everything pass. It asks, does this serve me? Does this make me stronger? If not, it stays outside the wall. The law of fortress walls demands that you become the architect of your own defenses. You must know the weak spots where negativity invades. For some, it is social media endless comparison, endless judgment. For some, it is toxic people who drain them with criticism and doubt. For some, it is their own unchecked environment news, gossip, chaos. A fortress mind studies its vulnerabilities, and then raises the walls higher where the enemy attacks most. And this is not imagination, it is neuroscience. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, the filter that decides what information enters your conscious mind. Whatever you constantly focus on, it highlights and reinforces. That is why two people can live the same day and one feels hopeless while the other feels powerful. The hopeless one has walls wide open, letting every failure dominate. The powerful one has built filters. They decide what deserves attention and what gets blocked. That is the fortress wall in action. But how do you build it? The first step is environment control. A king who allows traitors inside the kingdom cannot expect loyalty. You must remove the constant sources of negativity that weaken you. Cut off the toxic voices, mute the endless noise, starve the intruders. When you reduce exposure, your walls begin to rise. The second step is ritual reinforcement. Every morning, you decide what enters. Instead of starting your day with chaos, you begin with intention. Strong words, strong actions, strong inputs. This is called priming in psychology. You feed your mind strength first thing, so the filter is ready to block weakness. If you begin your day with doubt, the walls are already cracked before battle. If you begin with command, the walls are solid stone. The third step is selective absorption. You cannot avoid every negative event in life, but you can choose what meaning to give it. A fortress wall does not stop every arrow from flying, but it stops the arrow from piercing the heart. When criticism comes, you do not absorb the poison. You filter it. You ask, is there truth here that can make me stronger? If yes, you take it. If not, you throw it back over the wall. Most people absorb everything, every insult, every failure, until their mind is flooded with poison. The fortress mind absorbs only what builds strength. Over time, this law transforms you. People will notice that the things which used to crush you no longer touch you. The same insults bounce off. The same failures do not define you. Because your walls are too high, too thick, too reinforced. This is resilience, not just surviving attack, but being unshaken by it. Science confirms it. Studies in resilience psychology show that people who maintain strong mental boundaries are far less likely to be consumed by depression or anxiety. They don't deny reality. They simply refuse to give weakness free entry. Their fortress walls do not make them cold. They make them unbreakable. So now I ask you, what invaders are you letting inside your mind every day? Who are the voices you allow to sit inside your walls? How many rebels are walking freely in your kingdom because you never built defenses? If you are weak, it is not because you lack power. It is because you lack protection. The law of fortress walls is simple. Guard your gates. Strengthen your filters. Refuse free entry to the voices that seek to destroy you. You cannot stop the world from throwing stones, but you can build walls that make those stones meaningless. Every time you raise your defenses, every time you block the poison, every time you protect your inner kingdom, you make your mind more like a fortress. Repeat this command to yourself. My walls are strong. My gates are guarded. Only strength enters. Weakness dies outside. This is the second law, the law of fortress walls. Without it, your empire remains exposed. With it, your fortress becomes untouchable. Law 3. The law of reforging identity. Every negative thought hides inside one deeper poison, identity. When your mind whispers, I can't, what it truly says is, I am weak. When it says, I always fail, it means, I am a failure. And the most dangerous chains are not on your hands or your feet, they are on the story you tell yourself about who you are. That story becomes a cage, and until you break it, until you reforge it, you will always remain a prisoner of your own reflection. This is the law of reforging identity. Most people live under false identities. They believe the labels slapped on them by others, by society, by their own failures. A teacher once told them they were not smart. A parent once said they were useless. A group of people once laughed at them. And from these moments, they forged a rotten identity. I am not enough. I am small. I am broken. They repeat this story until it becomes truth. But it is not truth. It is a mask forced on them by weakness. Psychology proves this. The concept is called self-schema. It is the internal framework of who you think you are. If your schema is poisoned, your behavior follows. If you believe I am worthless, you will act worthless. If you believe I am resilient, you will act resilient. The brain seeks consistency between identity and action. So if you want to crush negative thoughts permanently, you cannot just fight them one by one. You must attack the source. You must reforge the identity itself. Think like a blacksmith. The weak identity is brittle metal, cracked and rusted. You cannot decorate it, you cannot polish it, you must break it and melt it down in fire. That fire is challenge. That fire is action. Every time you push against fear, every time you refuse surrender, you are heating the old identity and reshaping it into something new. The law of reforging identity demands this fire. It demands you stop saying, "This is just who I am." That is the voice of a prisoner. A fortress mind says, "I decide who I am, and I will reforge myself into steel." The first step is awareness. What identity do you currently hold that feeds negative thoughts? Maybe you call yourself lazy, and so every time work appears, the thought, "I can't do this," comes instantly. Maybe you call yourself unlucky, and so every failure becomes proof that the universe hates you. These identities are not truth. They are chains. You must name them to break them. Write them down, speak them out loud, expose them. The second step is declaration. Psychology shows the power of self-affirmation theory. When you affirm core values about yourself, your brain literally rewires to reduce defensiveness and fear. But affirmation must be forged, not whispered weakly. Saying, "I am strong" without action is delusion. But saying, "I am becoming unbreakable through discipline" is a declaration rooted in action. You are not lying to yourself. You are commanding your brain to build the new identity. The third step is action. Identity is not reshaped by words alone. It is reforged by consistent proof. Every time you act against the old story, the metal bends. If your old identity was, "I am fragile," then every time you face fear, instead of running, you strike the hammer. If your old identity was, "I always fail," then every time you persist through failure, you pour new steel into the mold. Slowly, the old self dies, and the new self rises. And here is the key. Negative thoughts lose their power when they no longer match your identity. If you have reforged your mind to believe, "I am disciplined, I am resilient," then when the thought "you are too weak" attacks, it bounces off the armor. It does not match the story, so the brain rejects it. The fortress wall is no longer outside, it is inside you. Science calls this cognitive dissonance. When a thought contradicts your core belief, your brain naturally resists it. So by reforging identity, you build an automatic defense system. Weak thoughts cannot survive in a strong identity. But reforging is not one strike, it is lifelong forging. You must return to the fire again and again. You must break and rebuild until your very blood carries the story of strength. You must remind yourself daily, "I am not the person I was yesterday. I am not the prisoner of old stories. I am the blacksmith of my identity, and I will forge myself until the chains melt." This is why some people rise from trauma stronger than ever. They do not deny what happened. They use the fire of pain to forge a harder, sharper identity. They say, "Because I suffered, I am now unshakable." That is the fortress mind. It uses even the enemy's fire to build stronger steel. Now ask yourself, what story have you been living? Whose voice wrote your identity? Was it your own? Or was it the world's? If the story is weak, then burn it. Throw it into the fire. Smash it with the hammer of discipline and rebuild. Your identity is not a cage, it is a weapon. And if you hold it with strength, no negative thought can cut through. Repeat this command. I am not my past. I am not their labels. I am the blacksmith of my own identity. I reforge myself into steel. This is Law 3, the law of reforging identity. Without it, you will always be chained to weakness. With it, you burn the chains, You rise from the fire, and you carry an identity so strong that no enemy thought dares to enter your fortress. Law 4. The law of controlled focus. The human mind is not limitless. It is a blade sharp, but only where it points. And yet most people waste their blade slashing at shadows, cutting at nothing, bleeding their strength on illusions. Negative thoughts thrive in this chaos because they know, wherever your focus goes, your energy follows. If you point your mind at fear, fear grows. If you point it at doubt, doubt multiplies. The fortress mind knows this truth. Focus is not a toy, it is a weapon. And if you do not control it, you hand the sword to your enemy. This is the law of controlled focus. Every second, your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of information, but your conscious mind can only hold a few at once. What you choose to focus on becomes your reality. This is not philosophy, it is neuroscience. The reticular activating system filters your world based on your focus. If you keep focusing on failure, your brain highlights every reason you cannot succeed. If you focus on strength, it begins to reveal opportunities, courage, and paths forward. You don't live in the world. You live in the world your focus creates. That is why negative thoughts are parasites of attention. They don't need proof, they just need your focus. Once they have it, they expand, they echo, they consume the battlefield of your mind. Most people do not lose because they are weak. They lose because they focus on weakness until it becomes all they can see. A man who stares at his wounds forgets he still has a sword in his hand. A soldier who stares at the enemy's strength forgets the strength in his own chest. Focus decides the outcome of war before the first strike is thrown. The law of controlled focus demands ruthless discipline. You must seize your attention as if it were the most valuable resource you own because it is. Time can be stolen, money can be stolen, but focus is life itself. Every moment you give it to fear, you feed fear. Every moment you give it to courage, you feed courage. The fortress mind never asks, "What do I feel like focusing on?" Feelings are slaves. Command is king. You decide. How do you take control? The first step is recognition. Notice where your focus goes when you are under attack. Do you obsess over mistakes? Do you replay failures in your head like broken records? That is undisciplined focus, and it is poison. Psychology calls it rumination, the endless replay of negative events. It destroys resilience, it multiplies stress, it erodes confidence. To obey the law of controlled focus, you must catch rumination in the act and strike it down. The second step is redirection. You cannot fight focus with willpower alone. The mind needs a new target. When weakness screams, you aim the blade elsewhere. A simple method is the thought replacement technique from cognitive behavioral therapy. Instead of repeating, "I am not enough," you deliberately replace it with, "I am training myself to become stronger." The brain follows the new focus. Over time, it builds new neural pathways, making strength the default instead of weakness. This is neuroplasticity, the rewiring of your brain through repeated focus. The third step is sharpening. Focus is like a blade. The more you train it, the sharper it cuts. This is why the greatest warriors of the mind use meditation, visualization, and mindfulness. These are not soft practices. They are drills for the mind's sword. Meditation trains you to notice when focus drifts and bring it back. Visualization trains you to see victory before battle begins. Mindfulness trains you to stay in the present moment, instead of bleeding energy into the past or future. Each drill sharpens the weapon until your focus cuts through negativity like paper. The law of controlled focus does not mean ignoring reality. It means mastering which part of reality you energize. A weak man sees failure and says, "This defines me." A fortress mind sees failure and says, "This is my training." Both face the same reality. One bled out, the other grew stronger. The difference was focus. Controlled focus is why some people rise in crisis while others collapse. When chaos strikes, the weak focus on fear, on loss, on doom. The strong focus on solutions, on resilience, on action. Their brain obeys, their body obeys. They act with clarity while others drown in noise. This is not luck, it is the law. So now ask yourself, where does your focus live? Do you point your blade at weakness or at strength? Do you feed the enemy or do you feed the warrior? Every time you let your mind wander into fear, you give the enemy your sword. Every time you command your focus back to power, you grip the weapon tighter. Repeat this command. I do not chase thoughts. I command focus. My blade is sharp. My mind is mine. Law 5, the law of relentless action. A thought can be broken by another thought. A belief can be reshaped by another belief. But there is one enemy that laughs at thoughts, one enemy that laughs at beliefs. That enemy is stagnation. Negative thoughts thrive in stillness. They multiply when you sit frozen, replaying doubts, feeding fears, waiting for the perfect moment. But perfection never arrives. Stillness is surrender. Inaction is a silent death. This is why the strongest psychological law is the law of relentless action. Understand this. Action is the executioner of negative thoughts. Fear cannot survive movement. Doubt cannot stand against momentum. Your brain is wired to adapt to what you repeatedly do. This is behavioral activation in psychology, the practice of forcing movement even when motivation is absent. Action creates emotion. Motion creates confidence. You do not wait to feel strong before acting. You act, and strength follows. Most people live as prisoners of hesitation. They think, they plan, they analyze, but they never move. They spend hours replaying what could go wrong, building castles of fear in their minds. And while they wait, the enemy multiplies. Their doubts sharpen, their confidence withers. They rot while standing still. But the fortress mind knows hesitation is the true enemy. You crush it with action. Think of war. A soldier does not wait until he feels no fear before charging. He charges, and in the charge, the fear breaks. The battlefield rewards movement. So does life. You are not here to wait until the perfect mindset arrives. You are here to strike first, to move before your mind has a chance to collapse into hesitation. Relentless action is the discipline of never letting fear dictate your steps. This does not mean mindless movement. Relentless action is precise, purposeful, continuous. It is the refusal to stand still in weakness. If you fail, you act again. If you doubt, you act again. If you succeed, you act again. You are always in motion, always pressing forward, never giving negative thoughts the stillness they need to grow. The moment you stop, the weeds of doubt begin to creep back. But if you stay in motion, they never find soil. The science is clear. Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches that when depressed or anxious patients are pushed into action, exercising, building routines, engaging in life, their negative thoughts lose strength. Why? Because the brain rewires itself around behavior. Thoughts follow action more than action follows thought. This is the secret. Stop waiting to feel right. Act, and the feelings will follow. Relentless action also builds identity. Every time you move forward despite fear, you tell your brain, I am a warrior, not a prisoner. Over time, this becomes truth. You stop identifying as the weak one, and you start identifying as the unstoppable one. Negative thoughts lose their grip because your actions contradict them at every step. This is the law of reforging identity, combined with the law of action, steel hammered by fire, sharpened by motion. But here is the hardest truth. Relentless action is not glamorous. It is not one grand strike. It is 1,000 small strikes. Every day, every hour. Getting out of bed when your mind says stay down. Speaking when your fear says stay silent. Training when your laziness says rest. Each small strike is a hammer on the anvil, shaping the fortress brick by brick. Consistency is the armor. Action is the hammer. Discipline is the fire. And yes, you will fail. You will stumble. But failure under action is progress. Failure under inaction is death. When you move, even mistakes sharpen you. When you stagnate, even safety rots you. The fortress mind is not built in one victory. It is built in relentless strikes, forged in scars, tempered in persistence. Now hear this command. From this day, you stop waiting. You stop hesitating. You stop begging for perfect conditions. You act again and again and again until the enemy of doubt starves. You act until fear becomes background noise. You act until negative thoughts can no longer keep pace with your movement. You act relentlessly, because relentless action is the ultimate law. This is Law 5, the law of relentless action. Without it, the other laws remain theory, ideas floating in air. With it, every law becomes alive, every weapon sharp, every fortress wall unbreakable. So now the choice is yours. You can leave these words as echoes in your mind, or you can carve them into steel with relentless action. You can remain the prisoner of hesitation, or you can become the commander of your destiny. Repeat this. I will not wait. I will not hesitate. I will act relentlessly. I am the fortress of my own mind. And with that, the laws are complete. The weapons are in your hands. Now rise, act, and let the world see what a mind of steel can do.